After I was found, the house had been pasted in all the papers, all over TV. The local newspapers dubbed it Grimm's Castle. I never knew if that was a typo. Texans spell things different. For instance, we don't always add the ly. People whispered that my grandfather must have had something to do with my disappearance, with the murder of all the black-eyed Susans because of his freaky house. Shades of Michael Jackson and his Neverland Ranch, they muttered, even after the state sent a man to death row a little over a year later for the crimes. These were the same people who had driven up to the front door every Christmas so their kids could gawk at the lit-up gingerbread house and grab a candy cane from the basket on the front porch. I pressed the bell. It no longer plays Ride of the Valkyries. I don't know what to expect, so I am a little surprised when the older couple that opened the door look perfectly suited to living here. The plump, worn-down housefrau with the kerchief on her head, the sharp nose, and the dust rag in her hand reminds me of the old woman in the shoe. I stutter out my request. There's an immediate glint of recognition by the woman, a slight softening of her mouth. She locates the small crescent moon scar under my eye. The woman's eyes say, "Poor little girl," even though it's been 18 years and I now have a girl of my own.
"I'm Bessie Wormuth," she says, "and this is my husband, Herb. Come in, dear."
Herb is scowling and leaning on his cane. Suspicious, I can tell. I don't blame him. I am a stranger, even though he knows exactly who I am. Everyone in a 500-mile radius does. I am the Cartwright girl, dumped once upon a time with a strangled college student and a stack of human bones out past Highway 10. In an abandoned patch of field near the Jenkins property. I am the star of screaming tabloid headlines and campfire ghost stories. I am one of the 4 black-eyed Susans. The lucky one. It will only take a few minutes, I promise. Mr. Wormuth frowns, but Mrs. Wormuth says, "Yes, of course." It is clear that she makes the decisions about all of the important things, like the height of the grass and what to do with a red-headed, kissed-by-evil waif on their doorstep asking to be let in.
"We won't be able to go down there with you,"
the man grumbles as he opens the door wider.
"Neither of us have been down there too much since we moved in,"
Mrs. Wormuth says hurriedly.
"Maybe once a year. It's damp, and there's a broken step. A busted hip could do either of us in. Break one little thing at this age and you're at the pearly gates in 30 days or less. If you don't want to die, don't step foot inside a hospital after you turn 65.
As she makes this grim pronouncement, I am frozen in the great room, flooded with memories, searching for things no longer there. The totem pole that Bobby and I sawed and carved one summer, completely unsupervised, with only one trip to the emergency room. Granddaddy's painting of a tiny mouse riding a handkerchief sailboat in a wicked, boiling ocean. Now, a Thomas Kincaid hangs in its place. The room is home to 2 flowered couches and a dizzying display of knickknacks, crowded on shelves and tucked in shadow boxes. German beer steins and candlesticks, a Little Women doll set, crystal butterflies and frogs, at least 50 delicately etched English teacups, a porcelain clown with a single black tear rolling down. All of them, I suspect, wondering how in the hell they ended up in the same neighborhood. The ticking is soothing. 10 antique clocks line one wall, 2 with twitching cattails keeping perfect time with each other. I can understand why Mrs. Wormuth chose our house. In her way, she is one of us.
"Here we go,"
she says. I follow her obediently, navigating a passageway that snakes off the living room. I used to be able to take its turns in the pitch dark on my roller skates. She is flipping light switches as we go, and I suddenly feel like I am walking to the chamber of my death.
"TV says the execution is in a couple of months."
I jump. This is exactly where my mind is traveling. The scratchy male voice behind me is Mr. Wormuth's, full of cigarette smoke. I pause, swallowing the knot in my throat as I wait for him to ask whether I plan to sit front row and watch my attacker suck in his last breath. Instead, he pats my shoulder.